Welcome, Sydnee-Beth Cross.
Hello.
Hello. So for those of you who don't know Sydnee, Sydnee is a freelance wigs, hair and makeup artist working in the UK. She is extremely talented, extremely quirky, extremely fun. Sydnee's life has just totally flourished in her passion. She's worked this year in the Birmingham Commonwealth Games, an opera festival, and recently landed her dream job on a touring musical. So cool. And now Sydnee has invested in her creativity and is now experiencing the beauty of a career fed by passion, which is what we're all about. And I'm so happy to hear that. I would love to start this conversation real simple, real fun. How did you glorious being, discover your passion? And what did it take for you to really start claiming that you were your own unique being and that the way that you wanted to do life was maybe different than the outside world was telling you? Go for it.
The passion has always been there. For my second birthday, my nan bought me a makeup table and I was obsessed with it. And it continued when me and my dad used to watch a lot of movies, and we'd watch the behind the scenes of the movies. And he showed me the behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings at about 6 years old. And I was heartbroken because I realized that all these monsters and things weren't real. But then it went into the process of them making the monsters. And I thought, oh, that's something that I could do. And I think it was about 11 years old, I'd started kind of sitting in my bedroom and playing with, I remember cutting up chocolate wrappers and sticking them to false eyelashes to make them big and purple, and then putting matching lipstick on. So I started doing the exciting makeup as opposed to the just following the trends makeup then. And through high school, I felt quite a lot of pressure. I was very academic, and there was a lot of pressure to go into an academic career. And it was always kind of a choice of veterinary or makeup artist, forensic or makeup artist, anthropology or makeup artist. And I was being pushed by one of my tutors in the academic direction. And I realized that this constant in my life had been the makeup. That was what I was happy doing. And it was a valid career option. Just because I'm capable of writing and doing mathematics doesn't mean that I shouldn't be investing in my creativity.
Well said.
Because that's what makes me happy. I don't want to sit in an office all day. So I made the decision. At 14, I'd gotten a place in a veterinary school, a specialist school, and I decided to drop the position because I thought, yes, it's a fantastic achievement, but I don't think it'll make me happy. And I'm so glad that I did that, because I went straight from school into basic hair and makeup at college, which was 2 years. And then I intended to go on to university, and I lost my brother in the second year of college. And I was able to continue. I did take a year out, but then I was able to continue repeating the year at college and going into university. And even with struggling with mental health and grief, I could power through because the makeup was a way to express that. I think that if I'd have gone for an academic route and chosen something that was very stressful and kind of didn't reward me in the same way, allow me to express myself, I don't think that I'd have been able to complete it. So I'd have been very lost then, because I'd have felt like I'd failed and backtracked, and it would have been failure to other people, but not to me, because it wasn't actually what I wanted to do.
Actually, just a question that's coming through now about that, because I hear a lot people struggling to see the point in all of this. Like, what's the point in creativity? What's the point in expressing yourself? What's the point in painting, drawing? Like, where is it going? Where is it leading? And so I'm wondering if you've experienced that similar line of inquiry, and what for you is the main reason you do what you do. Like, how does this serve your purpose in this life, let's say? not that there's one particular manifestation, but how is what you're doing, you know, because you know that it's connecting you to your heart, you know that it's assisting you in processing reality. So extrapolating that, how is this serving your soul and your path of purpose, let's say?
I did have this line of thought when I was a teenager, just doing painting my body in the bedroom, and I would spend 4, 5, 6 hours painting, take a picture in the early hours of the morning, and then shower it off. And it felt like there was very little point. I had a photograph at the end of it to show people, but I was enjoying it and I was learning. I was focusing on forms and experimenting with colors and textures, and it's the immediate happiness that I focus on. Another time that I thought it was when we did Metamorphosis, you instructed us to do free flow writing. And I remember thinking, what is the point? Why are we just going to write down this? You know, they're not complete thoughts, or not thoughts that you could read to other people and they wouldn't understand. And that was when I realized it's not for other people. I was writing exactly what was coming into my head. It wasn't complete sentences or anything like that, but it showed kind of my thought process without it being filtered by how I have to communicate it to other people. And that highlighted the important bits to me. And the point of everything for me is the immediate happiness, because you can plan for the future and we'll have goals and aspirations, but we may not make it there. And I don't think there's any point in working incredibly hard for happiness in a set number of years when you can be experiencing it right now in such a small number of ways. And you just have to allow yourself to enjoy them, because there are so many pressures of time. We have to get things done in a day. We've got to make sure that other people are happy with us. We have to continue moving with day-to-day life. And sometimes just stopping in a street and looking at a pigeon eating some crumbs, it puts the biggest smile on my face. And those few moments are so much better than if I were to walk head down, straight forward, following goals for no particular reason than to serve other people.
This is yeah, like I'm hearing what you're saying here. Like it's not about not having goals, it's not about not having aspirations, but it's more like doing the things that are assisting you in being present in the here now moment, in all that it is. And in that here now moment, the beauty of the pigeon eating the crumbs, or the capacity to really be present with a process, is sort of there. And so I guess for me, like when you're speaking, I've had my own relationship, let's say, with the desire to be happy, doing things to be happy. And I want to see if there's I want to introduce or see what your perspective is on what if it wasn't about happiness? Like, what if happiness is like a manifestation of what we really want, which is presence, which is the ability to be connected to ourselves truly. And so then happiness is a manifestation of that. But so is even like the drive to keep going. So is the willingness and the confidence to express yourself. So maybe there's more to it than happiness, because also, like, in my own experience, and I'd love to hear you too, how has it gone when you haven't been happy? You know, do you feel like there's a sense of failure, or that something's not going right? And speaking from my own experience, when I found myself attaching to happiness, that which didn't align to what I perceived as happiness, I felt really disheartened. And so, like, on this path, right, as we're accessing our true nature, it's up and down. And you've experienced that, right? There are challenges, there's ebbs and flows, like that's the nature of life. So how do you deal with the challenge? How do you deal with the difficulty? And like, what would you say to people if they're, you know, wanting to step more into their soulful expression, but are struggling to trust that process and are just focusing too much on happiness and aren't willing to accept the challenge that arises throughout that process?
I think you're so right about the whole presence thing, because I've struggled with mental health, and quite a lot of the time I would deal with the real low points by just appreciating the fact that I can experience it, and that ultimately it was intrinsic the majority of the time for me because of it being mental health as opposed to situational, although there are situational things. But so much of what we experience is temporary. And so if you can just allow yourself to feel those emotions, and you don't have to be happy all the time, that's an unrealistic expectation.
Totally.
But I think being able to cope with the day to day is what's
Yes.
beautiful to me, because there were some times where
Totally.
I didn't want to deal with it. I wanted to shut it all off. But now, for example, at the moment, I'm with the new job and
Yes.
other life aspects that I'm experiencing at the moment. I've been getting more anxiety than I ever have. And this past couple of weeks, I've really been able to sit and say, it's okay to feel anxious, but it doesn't serve me. So I've kind of dug to the source of what's causing it.
Great.
And found, can I alter it, or is it something that's out of my control? And if it's out of my control, I just have to breathe through it, and it's still there, it still niggles. That's the whole thing with anxieties, it's not always reasonable or logical. But just allowing yourself to feel like it and not shaming yourself for feeling negativity, especially when it does feel unreasonable, because a lot of the time people can offer very practical advice, and it's not easy to follow, or you know it yourself, but you can't just implement that because we're not straightforward machines. We're so complex, and being able to embrace everything that we experience is really important. And I think it aids us in when we do create, because you have the different facets to pour into it.
Yeah, I hear you there. Thanks for explaining that. Love what you said about us being these like complex, multifaceted beings, where it's not this straight line. It's like, okay, well, I logically know like this is a thing that could assist, or this one practical step. And then it's just like, well, okay, well, how do I extract myself even from the depths of my being where I'm really experiencing pain and negativity? And so this is interesting, because from one perspective, like, you know, we should just be able to snap ourselves out of it, right? And so if, you know, again, I'm really loving where we're going with this, because I feel it's so useful for people to hear the humanness, you know, the human experience, and how human to human, we can be hypocrites, we can be crap, we can know what's good for us and not do it. And so for you, walking this path, going through your own challenges, working with your own spaces inside to bring yourself outside, what is one or two or three ways that aren't logical that have helped you to regain that sense of purpose and presence and, okay, I can move forward? I want to hear the weird and the wacky of Sydnee-Beth.
So I I am a logical person, but I very rarely follow it. I am led by my emotions all of the time. If I know that I'm going to spend a copious amount of money or spend hours traveling to see somebody just for a short period of time that's going to bring me intense joy, I do it, regardless of if it's practical or not, because I want to experience the emotions. I don't really know how to answer the question.
Yeah, maybe more complex than meets the eye, because it's like it's a dynamic process. It's one thing on top of another on top of another, right? But then maybe let's shift. Yeah, go
on. So quite recently I had a decision about the job, and then I knew that making the decision was going to cause negative emotions for a period of time for me and another person. But ultimately, this is what I've been working towards for 4 or 5 years. And I thought, in the moment, yes, that's very intense, but I have to put my own priorities first, and sacrificing something that has been good but no longer serves me was the decision that I came to, because
Yeah.
I know that I didn't know it then. I hoped that the dream job would remain as wonderful as it is in the dream. And ultimately, there's been rough days. It's been a learning curve. Um,
Sure.
it's difficult. It's a hard life being away from home and quite isolated, even though you're with this group of people constantly. We're doing 8 shows a week. It's a lot of time with
Wow.
each other, and it still can be lonely. But I wasn't going to sacrifice that for something that I knew was comfortable. I was happier to take the risk.
Yeah. Awesome. So then, yeah, this is really cool, because it does lead to this question, like, what is something that you would say to people who are on this edge of this breakthrough, who are on the edge of making a leap, on the edge of making a big choice, and it's going to create maybe it's going to bring up some emotional process. It's going to maybe mean something has to be shed away, or essentially it's not comfortable to make this decision, but there's some sort of calling that's like, yes, yes. What would you say? What is one thing, one piece of advice you would give to a person in that position?
I quite often get rolled eyes when I say this, but I live by regret the things that you have done rather than the things you haven't. So if there's an opportunity and you don't know the outcome of that, but you'd like to experience it, I would always go for try it. You can alter things. Things are so temporary, and I think a lot of the time people get caught up in the immediate effects. But actually, if there's a job you don't like, you can move. If there are people that you're not gelling with, you can change your circles. It's not as permanent as people seem to think.
Totally.
And yes, it takes a lot of effort to remove yourself from certain situations, or if you're pegging a lot of hope on something and it doesn't work out, that can be heart-wrenching. But ultimately, it's all a process, and it's like an evolution, right? You move. I'm not the same person I was a few years ago, and that's beautiful that I've been able to experience every section of myself.
Yeah, so well said. So then you would say the piece of advice is regret what you have done instead of regretting what you haven't done.
Yeah, I'm very, very inquisitive person, and I hate not knowing the answers to things. So quite often, if I'm with my friends, we'll say, "Oh, I wonder what that building used to be used for," and then they'll just sit and carry on with their day, and I can't. I research, I find out the answer, and so I have all these very insignificant pieces of information, but it's because of that process, and that continues right through to the way that I live the more fundamental decisions of my life, in that I don't want to look back and think, what if? What might have happened if I'd have just taken a leap of faith?
Oh, this is so much, what so many of us need to hear, right? Like how much quote unquote harder it would be to live in that space of what if, and feeling like you're actually not living, it's just living in doubt, living in what if, and staying in the comfort zone. And for sure, also speaking from my own experience, I know the feeling of staying in comfort zone versus making the leap, and the position, the jump. It's not even a jump sometimes. It's like progression. And then sometimes it is a jump. Sometimes it's really like, go, throw it, do the thing. And I love how the words that
zone, but I don't actually believe that comfort zones are comfortable, because you sit in kind of the mundane, in what you know and what the majority of society expects us to kind of be happy with, but they're not happy. Everybody has these sort of fantasies of what they would like to do, and if you're in a position to feed the fantasy, you should absolutely do it.
I love that. The comfort zone is not comfortable. This is the name of your next book. Yeah, totally. And so for you, right, like you've had this drive to experiment, to express yourself, to explore this creative impulse through painting your body, or through challenging the norms of what is normal makeup and what is experimental. But then I feel you as fusing the two. It's like you're bringing both worlds together. And so you've become this like magical hybrid of like what is quote unquote normal, what is quote unquote, reserved for the theater, or something more like in a stage. And then you're like the living embodiment of how you can be that. You can be whatever you want to be. You can express yourself how you want to express, wear what you want, and in the most radiant of ways. And so for you, like, has there been a process of feeling comfortable in being different, let's say, like that? I mean, it's maybe quite
Absolutely
an ambiguous question perhaps, but for a lot of people, it's the challenge of the collective is to step outside of conformity, right? The challenge of the collective is to individuate, is to become the localized expression of the universal life force. And so you, as the localized expression, Sydnee-Beth, what's your experience in terms of claiming you and confidently shining that?
I'm very lucky in that I came from a rather unconventional family to begin with. My mother has always worn outrageous clothes, as has my dad. He's at one point he said, "I'm not sure if I could pull off a tongue piercing. I think I'm too old." And at the time that he said this, he had a fluorescent green mohawk. So already not raised by conventional people.
Sure.
But it was still pushed upon me by society. I was in high school and I remember I chopped up a belt and started wearing it as a necklace. It was a choker necklace essentially, but this was 10 years ago and they weren't in fashion yet. And I had a dog collar for years because that was what I chose to wear. And then I went to Brighton, which is a fantastic place if you're ever in the UK to visit. It's so diverse. And I bought my first 1950s style dress, the pin-up ones with the big petticoats, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. The colour, the polka dots, the fit and flair. It's something that appeals to me. I love the 1950s aesthetic anyway. And so starting to wear it was fantastic. But I remember being a teenager and we would go out for a meal and the only people that would compliment me would be like old men telling me that I reminded them of their wife when they were younger.
Wow.
Which is really sweet, but it's not the conventional like bumping into teenage girls and them saying, "Oh wow, I love your dress, where's it from?" kind of thing, which is what all my friends were experiencing. And I really wasn't comfortable wearing these things unless I had an occasion. So if it was a fancier meal or a celebration, a wedding. And now I got to the point where I had so many of these dresses and I was still wearing kind of regular clothes, incognito. Nobody would really bat an eyelid. And I thought, I'm not happy in these. If I have a day off, I get dressed up just to sit in the house. Why am I so self-conscious about wearing them outside? And so I started doing it. I started wearing them just to college, or if I was going to visit my grandma, it was just get dolled up, put the high heels on, wear the frilly socks, the petticoat, the jewelry, do your hair, do the makeup. And you don't see many people like that around. And I've never had a negative reaction. Everything that I was worried about was intrinsic. I only ever get compliments, and I don't mean that in a vain way. I mean it in people kind of appreciate the difference. And that's what I was scared of. I was scared to stand out. And now I've got the hot pink hair.
Yeah, no choice.
I still wear these clothes. I mean, the worst part of this job that I'm currently on for me is that we have to wear black all the time, and I'm such a colourful person. But I've looked at my black clothes and I don't have normal black clothes either. I have lace, I have leather, I have corsets, I have buckles. It's still not
you shine through, right? So it's like, despite the maybe the different boundaries. Like there's still the opportunity for our essence to shine through. And I feel like that's really an important piece to dive into a little bit of just how, even if the outside world is feeling like that radiant, that unique expression can't shine through, like there's always a way for it to do that. There's always a way for,
so nervous to kind of express myself through the weird makeup or the unusual clothing, and it's so nice. It brightens up other people's day when they see you shining as a person.
Yeah, definitely. It's infectious, right? And so like when you step into your power, which is stepping into your truth, you help other people to do that. It's like changing the fabric of the field. If everyone is just conforming, well, then it's pretty hard to be you. But as soon as there are more yous, it's shifting the resonance. It's like allowing people to tap into that and be like, yeah, cool, I can do that too. But something as well to that is, well, at what point then, you know, because you've stepped into that yourself, you know, this is really like, no, I give myself permission, right? And so I've definitely experienced it in my own journey of looking for permission from the outside world to let me know that I can do the thing that I want to do, seeking some sort of authority to be like, yes, now is the time. This is the time, the perfect time. And have you experienced this where you've somehow found yourself waiting for permission or waiting for the outside world to be like, you can do the thing that you want to do now? Or has it been a different experience for you?
No, I don't think I've ever really waited for anybody else to allow
Wonderful.
me to.
Good job.
I think it has always just been intrinsic. I've had to allow myself to do it, to step out of what I felt was societal pressure. And I feel I had that less so than a lot of people because of my unconventional parents. I was raised going to festivals, and I was raised with them wearing wacky clothes, and so that was my normal. And yet when I stepped out of the household, it was a completely different scene. That's when I got
on you, right?
Yeah. And as I said, even when I was Gothic, because I was Gothic before because that was the only alternative that I knew at that time. I didn't know that there was this 1950s kind of club that there's a lot of people wearing. I mean, now it's quite common. You see people in the 60s and 70s style, or the 80s, the bomber jackets and everything have come back because history repeats itself. But the 50s has not yet. Well, it did, but in the 80s. So I missed that one as well.
Sydnee-Beth bringing it back.
Yeah. So I remember my mom saying to me, because I have a lot of my mom's clothes from the 80s. And she would give them to me, and I would say, this is beautiful, but you wouldn't know it was from the 80s to look at. You know, it's not the typical shoulder pads, oversized, whatever they would wear. And she said, that's because I never followed the fashions. I wore what I liked. And what she liked then is still what she likes now. And because of that, it doesn't fit in with the stereotypical fashion. It's not moving in the same way that fast fashion does. And so I wear a lot of old clothes that you wouldn't know are old clothes. They just don't look like something you pick up from Primark nowadays.
Yeah, so it's really like, I hear you. Somehow still, even though you had this unconventional, let's say, upbringing, and still there's that point where it's like your choice to really to claim that truth, that seed of uniqueness.
I mean, and you could hear it with my father when he said, I'm not sure I could get away with a tongue piercing. He was probably about 40 years old, but still he'd got this fluorescent green mohawk. And I said, I think if any middle-aged man can pull it off, it's you. And so for Father's Day that year, I bought it. I took him to get his tongue pierced, and he's still got it done. He loves it. He gets different jewelry for it. He pops it out to people. He really enjoys it. And yet even he, as like a fully fledged adult, was so self-conscious of what other people would think about what a tongue piercing. That's so insignificant, you know.
Like,
it's
why
not,
are we afraid, right? Why are we afraid? This is really something, this like neurosis, somehow fear of judgment. Like where is that from? Like, is it a survival mechanism? Is it if we speak of way back when, the root, like if we're not accepted or judged, then we're not part of the tribe, and then we're not safe. So do you feel like it's playing on this, right?
No idea, but you have to kind of accept judgment. We all judge, and that's okay,
Yeah.
but it's how you deal with it. So I have always worn the unconventional things, and I wear things for me. I do not wear things for other people. And that I love honesty. My family is a little brutal with their honesty, to be honest, but it's the way that I've carried forward relationships and things. And sometimes I'll get dressed up and my partner will have gone, I don't really like that one. And I go, okay. I wear it anyway because I don't, sometimes I'll wear what he likes, knowing that he likes it, but it's still my clothes. And I know he likes it because I've worn it before and he said he likes it. And just because he says, oh, I don't really like that on you, doesn't mean I'm going to take it off and not wear it outside, because it's not for him. He might not have the same vision that I see. I might be basing an outfit off all these textures or a specific color, and he'll just see, oh, not enough cleavage, not a fan. And you can't kind of dig too deep into other people's judgment, because you don't know what's holding them back, and they might really want to
Yeah.
and be feeling this external pressure to not, and so they pass that forwards. It's kind of the whole bullies are usually being bullied by somebody else thing,
or
it's
themselves, right? It's a reflection of their own inner state. Like if we judge, it's a mirror of us judging ourselves. Like I speak from experience. The more that I perceive the outside world judging me, controlling me, the more I'm judging and the more I'm trying to control the situation. So like in order for us to really harness this the space of, okay, well, I'm going to do it, I'm going to wear the thing that might be outrageous, I'm going to do the photography project that's daring and whimsical, I'm going to write that song that's speaking from a really raw and vulnerable place. Why? So I can heal, so I can actually prove to myself that I'm worth it. So it's really more like this journey of self-love, if we can put it into this category. And perhaps this is the way that we really need to navigate expression, like doing it from this place of, can this allow me to heal so that I can actually help others to do the same, so I can be a better human and stop judging everyone, because I've just been judging myself the entire time. So this is really interesting. And as well, something you said about having to accept that things may not be as good as the dream, things not being as they seem. I remember actually in Metamorphosis, this was something that you were saying, like having to move beyond perfection and enjoy the process rather than the outcome.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So, right. We hear this a lot, and then the ego or whatever system in place comes in with, but I don't know. So this is really interesting how we can conceptually get something, and then when it comes to like the here now moment and the opportunity, the choice to accept the imperfect, to do the thing even if it might not work out, to, I don't know, someone working really a lot and they come to sit down and feel the calling to scribble, but they're like, for what? Like it's scribbles, it looks crap, like, it's not perfect. And so what for you assisted you in essentially enjoying the process more than the outcome, the thing itself?
So the thing that stuck with me most from Metamorphosis, and I've spoken to several people about it in the creative industry, I think jealousy is rife, and that's okay, because sometimes you see things and you're like, oh, I wish I could do that, I don't have that skill, or maybe it's mine wouldn't turn out that way, and so you don't even attempt it because of the fear of it not kind of turning out the way it is in your mind. But that's okay, because other people will still appreciate it, and everything that you do that you're not completely happy with, that you wish you could improve on, it is practice, and it's a lesson. When I was at the Commonwealth Games, this was shortly after Metamorphosis, there was a girl and She'd just joined the job and she'd done the most beautifully styled wig I've ever seen in person. And I was so jealous. And then I realized that jealousy it's not a feeling on its own, right? It's usually a need not being met,
Sure.
or it's hurt, or it's feeling kind of inferior. And so if you can identify what you're feeling as opposed to just labeling it jealousy and experiencing it, you can move on. And so for me, I wanted to make a wig that was as beautiful as hers, and I asked her to teach me. And
Beautiful.
I did it, and I made one, and it was stunning, and it's still my favorite wig. And I'm so glad that because I think before I would have been too shy. I would have just thought that she was sort of gatekeeping, and creative people
Right.
don't tend to do that. We want to share, we want to teach, we want to experience our expression with other people in the same way. And so, of course, when I said, I really like this, can you show me how? Of course, she was happy to do that. And yet, if I'd have done it pre-metamorphosis, I don't think that I would have asked. I'd have just sat and stewed in this feeling of inferiority. And then it would have had an impact on everything I did moving forward, because I would have thought, well, I won't attempt the more difficult ones because she can do them better. And it's not a case of she can do them better. It's that she's done it before, and so she knows what she's doing.
Yes. Wow, I so hear you. And exactly as well, the word gatekeeper. This is something that I speak to with fear as being a gatekeeper. But that, that this person who created this wig was a physical manifestation of this gatekeeper of fear, right? The fear being, I can't ask her. Like, I'm just, she created this thing that I wanted to create. Grr. And
exactly. It happens
right?
so much. I see art and I think, oh, that's beautiful, but I'm not going to try it because it won't turn out the same. No, it won't turn out the same.
Because I have this
I'm going
idea
to
in my
adapt
head
it.
that if
It's
I
going to
can't perfect it,
evolve.
I won't start it, right?
Yeah, and it's toxic because it really stops you. And I'd done it all through lockdown. I had all this time to be creative, and I didn't, because I went through the whole, well, what's the point thing? I'm going to get in the shower. I'm on my own. Nobody's going to see it. It doesn't earn me money. It's not going to get me a job. It's not going to move me forwards. And that is so ridiculous. And I've been working very hard this year, and I've not had much free time. And I had a little bit of a break in the beginning of September. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do some makeup for no reason. And I did it. I took the photographs and I showered it off. And then I went out just as a normal person. And that was so freeing to me to sit and do it for no other reason than I could.
For the sake of moving creative energy, of using and harnessing that impulse to literally, because right, without moving the energy, we experience that as blocks. And we experience, and then the blocks kind of get bigger and bigger, and which gives us more reason not to do the thing, more reason to stay unmotivated.
I think when you don't use the energy as well, when you've got this drive to kind of try something, even if it's probably not going to work out, if you don't use that energy and get it out in that way, then it sits and it kind of festers and it turns into something very negative. And you start feeling like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I should have just tried, which is where I always come back to the regret the things you do than the things you don't. Because if you sit there and you think, actually, I did have 2 hours and I could have just, like, what have you done instead? Pre-metamorphosis, again, I would spend a lot of time thinking, I want to read my book, or I want to paint. And then I think, oh, actually, the washing up needs doing, and I should clean the bathroom and put the washing away. And instead of doing either of those things, I would sit and watch television, brainless television, because it felt like I wasn't prioritizing myself over the chores that needed doing, in the same way that, like, if I sit and make more mess by doing a painting, maybe that wouldn't be good, because actually I should have tidied before indulging in myself. And in reality, it didn't help, because I didn't get anything out of the watching of television.
Didn't do either as well.
And I still didn't do the washing up. So why not just sit and create for a little bit and feel whatever you need to feel, and then move forwards, because you can do it after. It's fine. Like the washing up will wait. And it's not the end of the world. I think this is what a lot of people feel is such constraint, especially with time, and we're living in quite a corporate world generally, and
Oh,
it's always schedules and moving forwards and
yeah,
having
yeah.
things done on time and doing things in a certain way. And generally speaking, creatives don't fit into that. We don't work a 9 to 5 job. We don't have the same views as other people when it comes to politics or pressures or anything like that. And it's so
Yeah,
important
what you
to
call
invest in
conspiracy theorists sometimes too.
yourself. No. But you really I think kind of allowed me to invest in my own creativity and
Mm,
invest in myself, because
yeah.
even if it's 30 minutes sat reading a book, I feel better for it. That's what I want to do. It's what I enjoy. Or if it's having a little doodle, I used to hate doodling because it's not the sort of thing I would show to anyone. I'm not brilliant at sketching. It's not kind of my niche, but
Mm,
it's
mm.
okay to do it. If it takes you fancy on a whim, just try it.
Exactly. I really hear you there. I absolutely hear you, especially because there's this sense like, being in the more creative side of the industry of the world, there's this sort of condition that I'm sensing where it's like art or creativity is seen as a reward. It's seen as like the thing you do after work, and it's not seen as work, because how challenging is it sometimes to actually show up and create and move the creative energy instead of numbing ourselves with Netflix, social media, right? So that then still becomes a tool of working through your stuff. And to the outside, that could seem like a bludge, a waste of time. But actually, this is really working. This is working with our energy. This is working with moving emotion that could get stuck, which would assist us also showing up. If we have 9 to 5 jobs, right, that would assist you showing up for that job. Suddenly that job gets more interesting because you're seeing more of the capacity to play in the day to bring through innovation. And so this thing that society has seen as a waste of time is the very thing that makes your time richer. It makes it better, let's say. So I find this a very interesting perspective to sort of like mythbuster the whole thing of like it just being a reward that you do after everything when everything's good, when instead of it being a tool that you harness when things aren't good, so you can move through your stuff. Thank you as well for referencing Metamorphosis and your experience in that journey. I loved so much what you said in the testimonial about seeing the value of investing in yourself and having the confidence to really shine your true light. And so the question within that is, how would you describe in a few words like what you learned through working together in that process, and how what you've brought through into your own life?
I truly feel that Metamorphosis was a catalyst for me in accepting that, like you said, that the creativity is a job. I'm making a career of it. I've gone from the beginning of the year doing voluntary stuff that I was just trying to gain experience, build a CV, build networks,
Yeah.
to now landing the kind of dream position, which is what I've been working towards. I wanted the tour on a musical, and that's exactly where I am. And it's probably not where I'll stay forever, because
Oh,
dreams evolve the same as everything else.
exactly.
But
Exactly.
everything since Metamorphosis has been kind of embracing the opportunities, rather than thinking, oh, actually, this isn't going to bring me money. This isn't going to benefit my time with my loved ones. If there's an opportunity to feed my creativity, I've taken it, because it makes me happy. And I know ultimately that's working towards my goal of living in the moment, getting the career that I think, even the mundane stuff in the job, I'm sat there and I'm humming away, I'm happy, or I'm content. It's not exhilarating all the time. There are still dull bits to the job. I can't picture myself working a 9 to 5 in an office. I think I would become so numbed to anything. It would dull me down. I wouldn't want to express myself in other ways, because then what would be the point? I wouldn't be in the kind of environment that would nurture it. And the whole investing in your creativity was so important to realize, because
Yeah.
I kept pushing it back. I kept thinking, there are more important things I could be doing. And actually, for me, it is important, because this is what I'm building my life on. So I don't have to feel guilt
Mhm.
for prioritizing it, which is what I had been feeling previously. So that was the key thing that Metamorphosis unlocked for me. And as I said, it was a catalyst for embracing all of these different opportunities that maybe before I wouldn't have taken, because it meant I didn't get to spend as much time with people that I love, or it meant that I had to take time off work and therefore I wasn't earning. But I had enough to get by, and it was so enriching in comparison to just going to a part-time job to get me by.
And now you're earning money from the very thing that you thought had to stay as a side hustle, right?
Yeah, like dollar bills, yeah.
Yeah, super cool.
So good.
So good. So thank you for sharing that. I really hear the potency of, yeah, shifting into that space of seeing the value and investing in your creative energy, and how literally what can seem pointless is what has assisted you in staying on purpose. This is something that's really so awesome to hear. And I feel people who could be tuning into this are also like, yeah, I feel you, I hear you, I needed to hear this, thank you. Because we need to value this creative energy. Like, it's the thing that animates us. And so I've also felt in my own life, like when I'm not doing something to move the creative energy, like even if I identify with the label of like painter, let's say, I haven't painted in a while. I'm not in an environment where I have all my paints. And so then if I just identify with that label, well, then I'm not going to move that creative energy. And what you've shared as well, like if you feel called to doodle, if you feel called to read a book, like move the energy in some way, and that's going to open things up for you again. And so this is something that I find really important, is even moving away from the label of artist, of creative, and just as you as a human, as you are, as we are, able to move energy and able to align to what is calling us on a soul level to assist a greater purpose, a greater function. So before we wrap up, I'd love to invite you to share to the people listening here and now information of how we can find you, celebrate you. What's your info?
So I am partway through building a website that
Cool.
I've had on and off since I was probably about 16 and not invested time in. So that's coming along. That's www.sydnee-beth.uk.
Mm-hmm.
I also have an Instagram, which is where I post a lot of things that I'm working on. That's probably the best place that you can get an overall view of the life that I'm living, because I'm most up to date with it. And that is at Sydnee-Beth, which is SYDNEEBETH.
Yes. Beautiful.
And any other information will be on my website.
Very good. I'll pop that info down below as well so people can find you. But yay, thank you so much, Sydnee. This was a really beautiful conversation. Actually, I really liked the way that it unfolded and the topics that we covered, and ending up in this place of really able to see with more clarity, like what's the point of all of this? What's the point of moving creative energy, and fixating less on the how it's expressing and more the point of expressing it, of moving it and embracing that process. So yay, thank you so much. Do you have any final words for the people, for the podcast?
Well, thank you for reaching out to me. It's been nice to catch up, touch base again.
Yeah, totally.
No final words, but if you do another Metamorphosis, you should probably jump on that.
Very good. Cool. Thank you, Sydnee.